Hi everyone, welcome to our book launch this evening. My name is Jasmine, I'm from Carcanet Press, and I am very, very happy to welcome you to tonight's launch. Obviously we're here to celebrate Take Us the Little Foxes, collected poems by Miles Burrows, which is very exciting. Miles is going to read for us in a moment, and he is joined by poet, playwright and critic Jane Liddell-King. Her last published work was Faces in the Void, a collaboration with photographer Marion Davis, which looks at Czech survivors of the Holocaust. So go and seek that out if you don't know it. And many thanks to Jane for being here with us this evening. Jane is going to join us on screen in a sec, but before I invite her to join me, just so that you know what's going to happen, we'll be here for about an hour this evening. Obviously we can't see you, but it's good to see that you found the chat box. Do keep your messages coming in, let us know what you think of the reading. Please make sure that you click on everyone in the chat options before you send it, so we can all see each other's messages and keep the conversation going down there. During the readings, I'm going to show the text on screen so that you can follow along while Miles is reading. Do be aware that you're in control of your own screen. If you need to reconfigure it, have a play around, and you should be able to make it suit your needs. If you do have any sort of techie problems during the event, pop them in the chat and we'll try and help you as best as we can over the next hour. Finally, thank you for paying to be here. There is a discount code for you to buy a copy of the book with your £2 off. I'll put it in the chat at the end, and you'll get an email tomorrow, so we'll cover that later on. Once Miles has read, he's going to have a chat with Jane about some of the work and the writing and things like that. There is an opportunity for you to also get your questions into us. So as well as the chat, there's another button and it's called Q&A. You might need to click more to find it, but please find the Q&A box and put your questions in there, and then Jane can put those questions to Miles later on in the event. So I think that's all of the sort of admin stuff out of the way. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Jane on screen and we'll begin.
Hi, everybody. It's a huge privilege to be here and to introduce the poems of Miles Burrows. Miles is a local treasure and should be a national one too. If I have my way, I think he should also be a role model for a few generations of young to come. Having read classics at Oxford and stored a passion for poetry and etymology, in search of adventure, he morphed into a medic and made for the South China Sea, where his skills made a real difference, not least to sufferers from malaria and dysentery. Later, a Cambridge psychiatrist, he was also prized as Madame Jaja, fortune teller extraordinaire. Sometime an Icelandic trawlerman, he has always been a poet who compulsively surveys, then mines all his many lives and changing times. He meets us as ironists. Remember Aristotle's original Iron, the archetypically comic master of self-deprecation. Ears and eyes peeled, his shtick is to deny personal expertise while exposing and puncturing the inflated aspirations of the boaster, his opposite number. As listeners to Miles, people, places and things, we must stay comparably alert to inflection and innuendo as people, places and things are excavated, dissected, exposed and presented fresh from the awesome heights of dispassion. His irony layers while promising to lay bare the real, whatever that is. Gifted with intense curiosity, Miles ponders its mysteries. Knowledge at its most elusive is worth the hunt. His timing is exquisite, final lines nailless. Read End of Life Plan as soon as you've bought the book and see what happens to Blakeney. But Miles does not ignore the empathy imperative. expressing great tenderness in Say Orla or Mama's Last Journey. So let's now listen to him reading, and then be sure to order multiple copies of this feast of a book, topped off as it is with what is surely the year's most seductively elusive title.
Well, am I on? Not yet. Am I unmuted? Can you unmute me? It says mute there. Unmute.
You're unmuted, Miles. We can hear you.
Oh, good. Right. Well, thank you very much for that, Jane. I'll try to live up to some of those comments. And thank you very much for coming, everybody. All right, shall I start to read then? I think I've nothing better to do. Here we go. This is called Take Us the Little Foxes, which comes from, as you know, this Song of Solomon, one of the most famous love poems that there is. And it's a very strange comment in the middle about training the little foxes, which is a bit mysterious. How can that come into a love poem? So I wrote this because I was in the Middle East looking in a natural history society for some vegetation in the desert. And somebody mentioned that the Queen of Sheba's palace was somewhere around here. And so as we looked in the sand for the Queen of Sheba's palace, these thoughts came to me. So take us the little foxes. In the desert, the Natural History Group had discovered a tiny wizened gourd called Prophet's Cucumber. You could imagine guarded prophecies. There was also a succulent green shrub that survived here because it gave diarrhea to camels, and the camels knew this. The Queen of Sheba's palace was somewhere around here. She looked forward to Solomon's visit, imagining Bob Dylan and his songs. When he arrived in a long black overcoat in spite of the heat, a Homburg hat with a broad brim, she wished he had shaved. In his white silk scarf, turning his ring, he spoke the language of animals, horse whispering on all fours. Sometimes he tires of it. His ring, I threw it away many times. The fisherman kept bringing it back. Fish in the desert? He would catch for her desert salmon and the laundered money, the bank account in Geneva. She had always wanted to visit Geneva. Whisper it not in Gath, darling, but I'm going to have a baby. Awesome. I'm making a vision statement. We're working closely with environmentalists. It's wilder here than Vegas. Lozenge-shaped mirrors in the foyer with scalloped edges, a casino complex. He stayed for weeks. So many pointed domes. Can it come up? Next page. Do I control that? Let's see if I can.
There it is, it's there now.
Oh, here we are. Pictures of himself doing card tricks, inventing strange machines, pronouncing the secret names of God. Take me to Cannes, she whispered as they sat together eating nuts. Cannes is finished, he said, finished. If I could go to Cannes, would I be here? Can I do my arrival again, she asked. No, I've seen your arrival. What was it like? It was magnificent, but I don't want to see it again, not now. Dr. Ruffage, in the Natural History Group, imagined Sheba staring out, overlooking the sea, the Straits of Hormuz, waiting for Solomon. In his black overcoat, he would be Leonard Cohen. Their age difference. He had written to her on airmail paper, still retaining the impress of letters to the Queen of Ascalon and to the Queen of Gath. Sol, I like you, I respect you. Your funky wave band, it's so off-label. Take us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. It speaks to me. I'm thinking Nina Simone, castanets. But foxes eat grapes? I'm kind of like, excuse me. So I'm going to have a baby. Well, that is the end of the first poem. Now the next thing, Jane comes on, I think.
Right. Yes, we were going to discuss the somewhat enigmatic title, which, as you say, is from this amazing and wonderful love song that has found its way into the canon of the Bible. And I just wondered how you came upon that particular verse.
Well, no, I was just wandering about in the desert and it just came to me, really. Take us the foxes, the little foxes, because it stands out and we don't quite know what it is. It's rather mysterious. And because it's supposed to be a love song, and how do foxes get into the love song? And I was thinking that probably it was a mistake, and that it was probably, you know, King Solomon had already 300 wives. He didn't really need another one. And in any case, he didn't know what to say to these women because he exhausted himself, actually. But they said you'd have to have another wife because, you know, the king of Ascalon has already got 350 wives, so you need another wife. And so he said, well, okay, but I'm getting quite tired and I don't know what to say to these women. They all just seem the same. And so they said, don't worry, leave it to us. We'll just get some old love poems written by other people and we can put them in an envelope and send them off, because you can be sure of one thing, she's not going to read them. You never do. And so as a consequence, this whole package was sent to the Queen of Sheba, and it happened to contain on the back of one of the love poems some practical instructions on market gardening and how to protect your allotment from foxes. And so that's how it came to be. And gradually the rabbinical scholars got hold of it, was determined it had mystical, erotic significance. But really, probably it was just a text of a bit like Monty Don or somebody telling you how to run your garden properly.
Well, I think that's wonderfully interesting. You might be protecting your garden, but I think that also, and quite interestingly, the brothers are the guardians of this young woman, this young Shulamite woman who is sort of on the edge of puberty. She's very, very young, and that there were tribes around who seized wives for themselves. And in particular, there were wonderful ceremonies, as far as I know, in which the young women danced in the vineyards. So, I mean, it works wonderfully in relation to your poem, all of this. And that the brothers and the fathers had to guard the girls because obviously they wanted them to retain the bloodlines. They didn't want them to be seized by marauding tribes, just as I suppose in the same way that farmers and gardeners didn't want the foxes to come in. And what was also incredibly interesting, because I remember when we were discussing this poem, that neither of us knew anything about the diet of foxes. And this is what I love in particular, or one of the things I most love about your poems. They send the reader off into extraordinary paths of knowledge. And it was terribly interesting to discover that foxes eat wild and cultivated fruits, including blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, plums, grapes, dates, and figs. So indeed, there may have had to have been a kind of note on the back of the seed saying, you know, watch out where you plant your fruit trees. So I just thought also it was a terribly wonderful title for that reason. So thank you for that. Do you want to say anything else about that, or would you like to go on and read the next?
I think I'd like to go on and read the next one.
Yeah, I think that's very good.
If it comes up. Oh yes, comes from Empirical Sonnets. You see, we know enough about metaphysical sonnets with John Donne and people getting away from reality. And so I thought we needed a whole new school of sonnets which was anti-metaphysical and related simply to things that actually happened in real life. And the first one I've called The Road to Krakow. And it is set, first of all, in a tango lounge, or tango teaching church hall, actually. The road to Krakow. Are you an academic, she says? You dance like an academic. I'm being hauled about like a sack of potatoes. She goes white and has to sit down in a different room. It's like riding a donkey on Brighton Beach. So I say, do you go to Brighton a lot? I've got so old, my wife can only go out with me after dark. Another cramped little poem in its little seat belt. So I go to this psychiatrist. I think things are funny, which are not funny. You're not mad, she says. I could tell she was hopeless. I could see from the pictures she hung on her walls. I don't like walls hung with reproductions, I say. They're originals, she says. So it's worse. So I organize a getaway mini break to Krakow. Jessica says, that's fine, I'll organize it. Midweek, senior citizen rail super saver to Stettin via Lodz before 28th, depart Luton 0330 in a group, returning in time for you to be back at work on Friday. But I wanted Krakow. You don't want Krakow. When you get to these places, all you do is drink coffee. You don't need to go all that way to drink a cup of coffee. I'll buy you some coffee and we can make it and drink it here. Why Krakow? I want to hear Polish girls talking Polish. Play Chopin, shut your eyes, and you're in Krakow. Yes, it's better than Krakow, but I'd still like to see Krakow. Why? No, I want to understand your mentality. Why? That's the end of that one. Okay, that's the end of that poem. Yes. Next poem after that is called Icelandic Journal. This is a prose poem type of thing, taken from an old journal I found from a visit I made to Iceland in midwinter to work as a deckhand. And here's a little extract from this journal here. My job really was to move the tubs of bait across the deck to their particular places where the line, which was inside the tubs and was all hooked and baited, could be put out over the side. There were 20, 30, 40 of these tubs, and I had to push them out against the sway of the boat. I'll read a little bit of this. I leaned back into the opening to relieve the nausea from the diesel fumes. When 40 lines are out, they'll make a half-mile line close to the bottom. We put the empty tubs into a new position on the foredeck. The task begins again. I comfort myself, there are 40 tubs. In mathematics, 40 can never exceed itself. 8 groups of 5 or 4 of 10, it makes a difference, because each journey dragging the tubs over the pitching, icy foredeck is a struggle. Try 5 stacks of 8. Tutti has piled them up ready. He does a lot of my work quietly. He pulls a face and asks if I have any dreams. I sleep so much. On the foredeck, by the winch, there's a kind of wheel which the tubs can be dragged past if I can lift the wheel up without breaking it. But the wheel is held down by a firm rubber strap. I started banging the tubs about in a tantrum and succeeded in breaking the iron bottom of one of the tubs. Schoolie came and asked if I was seasick and helped me. Now the first watch. It's breakfast now. Coffee, orangeade, 2 mugs, rusk and butter, 1 biscuit. On watch at 2 a.m. Alone on the bridge with the rocking stars and smell of gloves drying, I watch the indicators. Tutti comes and switches the lights on and the stars off. Stars on again. A lovely night. Sharp air, stars in unusual patterns. They're different intensities, some near, some further away, like birds calling in a wood. Can it go up now a bit? It's up now. I push the steering handle to keep in view the intermittent light of the nearest marker buoy, flashing and dipping, gulls floating up and down like motes in the eye of darkness. 2 a.m. Waking the crew, I try to do it gently. First, the skipper, John, in his cabin, abetting the bridge. I go in very gently and tell him 6 o'clock, so gently that he'll not wake up for another 20 minutes. Then down the companion ladder to the other cabins, waking Matti and Ollie, then Skuli in his cabin. Skuli wakes as if for an emergency. Cornflakes, 3 helpings, iced sour cream with sugar. I go to the hatchway and sit on the combing, putting on the second pair of trousers. The others are on the foredeck. The floodlight is on. Winch and rollers and slide already in place. The day's work is beginning. The sudden temperature drop as when a ghost is said to appear. Maybe I slept. Or maybe this is sleep. Maybe this rusk is sleep. And I'm eating sleep today in the form of rusks. Sofathirnan, sleep thorn. In the galley, the woman on the calendar is poised, chin in hand, above the chessboard, considering her move, and her other hand resting on her thigh, up which the long skirt has ridden. As the boat tilts, she seems to swing her unclothed leg. The other calendar says, fly united, shows 2 ducks mating in mid-flight. The one in front looks back with his tongue hanging out. Hauling in 2. As the lines are winched in and each cod is pulled in on its hook, I slit its throat and sling the fish heavy as a young child down into the scarlet hold. And if I pause to clap my twice-gloved hands or sharpen the knife, am warned by a shout, Blodgafiskin, by snub-nosed Skuli, who unhooks them off the line and flings them into the hold below the arc lamps. The water runs like a trout stream over the deck, first one way, then the other, and walls of water black and white as it rises into the air, the vessel itself in mid-air for a moment, as if it was a racing dinghy, so that the boys keep their balance in the afterdeck by hanging from bars in the roof, then keep their spirits up dancing on the foredeck and yelling at the sea. Sea icicles stretch horizontal from the shrouds. The hatches are stuck fast with sea ice. Ropes icebound, solid ice caking the mast, and hail and snow perpetually on the attack, with raves breaking over the bows, and still the fish slip and slither into the hold, the big hook through the eyes, or the baiting hook stuck fast in the gaping throat, the scarlet gills open in a spasm under the tungsten floods. Like messages from very distant stars. I'm jumping ship, nobody knows, but I do. I sing into the storm loudly. Irene, good night. I'll see you in my dreams. You feeling better now? Asks Skuli. He's always thinking of me. He lent me his gloves. The Icelanders treat me as a not very intelligent dog with a system of whistles and gestures. People go to sea through lack of imagination. A bit better now, you did not die this time. I went ashore. It looked very beautiful with its white eider duck in the water, and gulls and ravens gather over the fish processing plant. The sea must love us to treat us like this. It is ready to say goodbye at any time. As I finish that. I tried to undo the frozen knot in the nylon rope or kick it flat enough to go through the iron ring. Skuli had to come and untie it for me. He jumps down into the snow on the quay, and the other end, he ties the other end of the fat nylon hawser into a bollard. He winds the rope into the shape of a bowline, then looks at it for a while. He must be tired, exhausted. He's forgotten how to finish the knot. The next poem is quite different. This is taken from a diary about an old lady who is dying, a mother who's dying. And it's a combination of modern medicine and end-of-life care with Buddhist and Taoist beliefs. It's a short extract. Of 16th of May, that's the third one here. Early this morning, Mama seemed okay. Had a vial of liquid feed via the tube. After lunch, her blood pressure was falling. She was vomiting. I called my brother and we rushed her back to hospital. She had dilated pupils and was not breathing. I did CPR in the car. The ER nurse said I should have waited for the ambulance, but I'm trained as EMT technician. The car was quicker. At 14:30, the doctor removed the oxygen mask and all the tubes after discussing with us. Mama was pronounced clinically dead. Little sister can see the spirits of Papa and Auntie standing by her. I cuddled her head and tried to keep her warm so as she lay not breathing on the ER bed, waiting for the transport to take her body home. Her feet and hands were getting cold. I tried holding her close to share my warmth, hoping to slow down her life from slipping away. I murmured into her ear, "You're going home." Coming back from the hospital, I yelped like a dog being run over. You feel the sadness of the world like an open wound in the heart, fresh and raw like a burn on the skin. Strangers are drawn to you because you can feel the pain, the unquenchable past, the sweetness of birdsong. I told Mama all the scenes on the way home so that her spirit should know the way. When we arrived home, I told Mama, "We're getting out of the car now." Big sister opened a black umbrella over the stretcher to shield the body, as Mama is now a spirit and can't tolerate sunlight. The gate and front door of the house are open and all the lights are on. We got out her favorite red and purple velvet dress from the wardrobe. I looked through all her lipsticks and found the one she always liked among so many. Right, so that one. And then the final poem, different mood, is called English Provincial Poetry. And it's really with respect to Elizabeth David and her book on English provincial cookery. In a Sussex farmhouse before the war, simple ingredients in the rough were readily available. Sunsets, owls, ferrets, wood smoke. They required time and attention to process, yet were rewarding. They're prized now by town dwellers who find them hard to obtain, and often only in processed or second-hand form. A lot of nonsense is written about form. Form is no more or less than shape. The 1930s kitchen had its shapes cut out of tins as molds for trifles and junkets, themselves called molds. Have a few shapes and keep them clean and sharp. Rhyme is no more needed than a two-tone doorbell. A reader is entitled to a theme, e.g. loss, attraction, nausea, mystical union with nature. It is little use mixing themes, nausea with mystical union. Do not strive for originality. Never lose contact with your reader. Once lost, it is hard, sometimes impossible, to regain. Do not use the word gyre. This can produce a severe reaction in some readers. The same goes for desolate. More importantly, resist the temptation to introduce your poem with a couple of lines from Dante. This will look like pampas grass in front of a 1950s terraced house. Feeling. Standing in front of an old ruin, in Italy, for example, can induce a poetic feeling in many English people. Objective correlative. Having decided theme and shape, get hold of your objective correlative. See glossary, page 47. This could be a sunset, often a wild bird, e.g. a hawk, perhaps lame, or some obsolescent piece of country apparatus such as a spade, a dibber, perhaps belonging to your old father, preferably with some nostalgic flavor. Old carpentry tools can often be found in car boot sales. By contrast, also try up-to-date materials like old betting tickets, iPhones, tubes, tickets, deodorants, pizza packaging. With the right treatment, prolonged whisking, montage, a sophisticated dish can surprise. But a reliable effect is produced more easily from ruined artifacts and can rarely be beaten. An old Bakelite wireless or crystal set, a ruined Hoover, perhaps with a torn bag or ill-fitting plug. This is because many readers, being themselves damaged or feeling damaged or wishing to feel damaged, will identify more easily by means of the pathetic fallacy. See chapter 10, footnote 37, though it's doubtful if this is really a fallacy. Or they could be happy, but still enjoy considering ruins in the same way that we enjoy reading about murders or executions, floods, landslides, or people without enough to eat. That's the end of that one. I think that's the end and break time now. Yes, good. Oh, there's Jane.
Hi, I think we were going to have some words about that last poem, which I totally love. Where shall I start? I'm going to start with the last line because it's a devastatingly brilliant last line. Did it just come to you?
Well, I suppose it did, yes. I can't remember now. I think so. I was very much in love with Elizabeth David's cookery books at that time. I still am. I think she's a master of sort of nostalgic poetry.
Yeah,
I mean,
what she does is to transform, of course, English cookery, even though she publishes all those books about salts and spices and potted meats and the loaves and the aromatics. At the same time, there's a wonderful kind of criticism of what's going on
yes.
in some English kitchens, and there you are doing something very, very, very cleverly criticizing what is going on in certain poems.
Yes,
and the certain things that people want from certain poems.
Yes, and also I like the way of a poem which is actually didactic. You know, it's very, very dictatorial, but it's telling you what to do and how to do it. And at the same time, it's actually bringing out a very nostalgic idea about the 1930s in the life in the countryside.
Can you say a bit more about your experience of life, your sense of life in the 30s in the countryside?
Well, we didn't really quite live in we always wanted to live in the countryside, but we lived in the suburbs. I always blamed my father for this because you see, all the people at school, they all lived in the old rectory in somewhere in this countryside, and we were living in Leicester, which was the wrong side of England altogether. We should be living in Surrey. And so...
When you say should, sorry to interrupt you, when you say should, in what sense should? Who's telling you that you should?
Well, if I wanted to feel like one of the community there.
Oh, right, okay.
You see, we were all together, and I was growing up, I had nobody else to see. It was just these people who all came from Surrey and Farnham. And so I was hoping that we should be able to get at least out of Leicester. And I kept telling my father he should be living in an old rectory somewhere in the countryside. And we did eventually move to an unadopted road, which is the next best thing. It's quite near a golf course, and it had its own sort of gas lighting. And we refused to have it adopted. And so that was as near as we got. But I always really blamed my father for not living in the heart of the country.
well, you've got this wonderful line about never lose contact with your reader. So did you feel that by not living in the heart of the country, you were at risk of losing contact with those people with whom you wanted to be in contact?
Not really, no, I didn't think of it like that. That never lose contact with your reader, I felt was a good advice to a poet, really, or to anybody.
Yeah, so yeah, so that it's a kind of recipe for writing poems, and Elizabeth Davies writing recipes, and the two things just come together quite wonderfully and brilliantly. But the last line is absolutely just moves on to a completely different plane of experience.
Yes, it does a bit. I felt perhaps it was a bit heavy duty.
No, it's fantastic. It transforms everything that's gone before. I just think it's brilliant. So brilliant last line. Maybe people will ask you more about that, and also you're very clever about the pathetic fallacy in these various critical terms.
Well, yeah. I always, Elizabeth Davies was really a kind of Bible. It was either the New Testament in Greek or the work of Elizabeth Davies. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know how are we doing for timing? Perhaps we should move on to some questions now.
Yes.
That would seem to be a good idea. Look, we have a question from Michael Schmidt, who says, hang on, let me just move this along. Right, Michael Schmidt is saying, I keep wondering how your poems begin. They often start in humor and then change key. I think we've got a huge change of key in this poem we've just discussed. I have the sense that the poem surprises you as much as it does the reader. Is this the case?
Well, I hope so. Yes, I like to be surprised, and that's why I keep a notebook under my pillow at night in case some thought comes in, but it's not always what you want. Yes, I suppose I'm trying to surprise myself, yes.
What was the last thing that surprised you, Miles?
Well, I suppose this zooming business and coming in and out of Zoom has been a bit taxing, and that's been a surprise. You don't know who's going to come on next.
Right, we've got a question here from André Mangeau.
Oh yes, André Mangeau, yes.
So much breadth of experience, apparently multiple lives you've lived and places you've been, Miles. Were you always writing poems about these things contemporaneously, or as many later or latterly, recollecting in tranquility?
Oh, well, thank you for that question. I didn't really keep much record at the time, although I have just been ransacking through a lot of old diaries in the loft. I did come across some old diaries from medical school and some from my sort of Eastern travels. I have got some old diaries, but I've been very bad at keeping very much contemporary records. I have got quite a few diaries of the work in Thailand, and also of the little bit from New Guinea, but not as much as I should do, because it's amazing when you look at these diaries, the freshness that they seem to have compared with what memory will tell you.
And are we going to get some more poems from those experiences?
I should think so. There are probably some more coming up this evening, I guess.
Right. Well, I don't know. I don't know if we've got any more questions. Yes, we do. Rebecca Watt says, Miles, thank you for your wonderful poems. I would love to know which poems you think tuned your ear or turned you on to poetry. That's interesting. You seem to be quite harsh about Eliot, not to mention Pound in that last one. So anyway, there is Rebecca's question.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. That's very kind. Let me see now. Actually, I think T.S. Eliot, at school, we were all T.S. Eliot. And I still feel that we were all talking in Eliot types rhythms. And then we had to sort of do somersaults and become New York poets. And it was one somersault after another, chasing the wheel of fire kind of thing. But the question was who, I don't know. You see, I used to love reading Arthur Waley's translation from the Chinese. And I rather liked Osbert Sitwell's book about his life on in Scarborough, when he was traipsing up and down the beach at low tide, out of season, and the different characters he met who were living out of season in Scarborough. So does that maybe answer the question a little bit? So it's Arthur Waley, Osbert Sitwell, T.S. Eliot, and then the New York poets.
How about Sappho? Can I ask you another question? Because in that lovely poem, Orla, there is a reference to Sappho.
Yes, yes. Well, I very much like fragments of poems that are not complete. And the smaller the fragment, the more interesting they are, really. And you managed to find a book by Anne Carson, I think, which was
I did, yes, called
Sappho's poetry, including all the fragmentary poems, and each vacant line is mentioned in the book and given its specific place. So, what was the question now?
About the question was which poets tune your ear?
Yes, and that was the answer to that. But then you said, what about Sappho? We came on to that then.
Well, it just that Sappho wasn't on the list, and
no,
I remember
it couldn't be.
We had this
it could hardly be on the list because she was in Greek and also very fragmentary. But there was this one poem which she did write, which in English goes like, he seems to be like a god, a man who sits next to you at dinner and hears your laughter and smiles. And I look at you and feel like an electric flame going through my veins and can't speak or stand up and everything is dark. That's more or less what Sappho wrote as a girl looking at her girlfriend sitting next to a man at a table.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions, or is everybody now going to order 3 books each, please? Well, we have a bit of time. I'm wondering, who are you reading now, Miles? Because I know that you constantly bring wonderful, wonderful poems round to my house.
Well,
which poets are by your bed at the moment?
That's fantastic. I've got this book called The Pillow Book of Say Shonagon. It's incredible. I don't know if, I think she's some kind of, well, she was a courtier, and she's got this fantastic line. Today, I thought I would just dash off a poem and send it to the Empress in a basket together with a shovel full of snow. And I thought that's incredible little line, because as soon as you see that, you sort of feel the whole atmosphere of that Japanese court in the 14th century, whenever it was. So that's the book I'm reading at the moment.
Right. Well, I'm kind of hoping that everybody is now going to buy, as I say, at least 3 copies of this book. Would you like to read one more poem, Miles, as we don't seem to have any more questions that I can...
Yes, yes, I'd like to.
I can see. Would you like to read Greenfinch?
Yes, Will. Here we go. Greenfinch. When the Russian girl arrived late to intermediate tango class upstairs in Pretoria Road Church Hall, wearing white tennis shorts, she brought to mind a greenfinch in the pocketbook of birds that adds a welcome touch of color to suburban gardens and is partial to elm seed so that one imagined old men scattering elm seed wildly in their allotments and waking up 100 years later in a forest of elm trees. They stumble about in a forest, blind with tears, to the music of Rodriguez's guitar concerto, and hang on to furniture to stop themselves falling over in their kitchens, and drink tea shakily from enamel mugs.
Thank you very much. That is quite a wonderful poem, really, about both the greenfinch and the reaction of these men.
Oh, we've got time for another one now.
Yeah, seeing the girl, I love it. Oh, yes, yes. Let's have I'll See Myself Out.
Yes, yeah, I'll see myself out. Some poets lift you up. Others let you down. Most leave you exactly where you were. I'm reading the banker poets. The banker poets write with prescience and self-knowledge and guilt of bankers. I don't mean the tailored girls waiting to help you with the computer in the wall beneath the giant replay of the football match of Everton versus Spurs. I don't mean the pretty Czechs or the wide-eyed Irish colleens, like hostesses in a plane, not wobbling but staying up on faith alone without us having to concentrate. I don't mean the man who bursts in from stage right like a ghost, not looking right or left, and puts his special card into a concealed door in the wall, as if escaping from the wrong cocktail party, or the curtain has gone up on the wrong play. I mean the ones who are not here, the ones who are writing poems in the Mexican Gulf for me. My social life is in the bank, in the queue that organizes space and time. I feel things moving out of sight, and I have my place in the unhurried order of things. All I have to do is stand in the queue. The girl at the desk says, "What is the date your father died?" And when I tell her, she pauses and says, "Lovely." And we are standing together in the rain, seeing the lichen on a grave in the Aran Islands. In a minute, she's going to ask me the name of my first dog. I hold it ready in the mind.
Thank you very much. I think, again, that that poem just manages to be extremely funny and also incredibly moving. So you're doing both the irony and the empathy together. Okay. And thank you. It is.
We've got time for Orla.
Yes, let's have Orla, and we've also got another dog.
Okay. Orla calls her dog after me. I'm not sure if I like this, as my name is not suitable for a dog, especially if the dog is very ill, starts dragging its legs, and may have to be put down. I told Orla's mother I couldn't speak when looking at Orla. An electric flame ran through my veins. I couldn't stand up. There was a ringing in my ears, and my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I had been reading a Greek poet. She told Orla and the whole family. Orla comes and gives me a hug, as people do in Canada. And her brother and sister-in-law and 3 children stand in the street watching with their mouths open. Well, next Christmas, I'm still reading this Greek poet. It's only about 3 lines, more of a fragment really. Orla's mother invites me for mince pies because Orla is there again. I'm retuning a toy guitar as conversation is running out, and Orla is knitting on the other side of the room to make a waistcoat for her next dog. So I ask, "How much do you weigh, Orla?" And after a short pause, she says 125 pounds or something, which I convert into kilograms roughly in my head and think, that's not too heavy. I mean, divide by 0.2 is more like multiply. And even 60 kilograms is really only 3 times more than you could carry on board an airplane as hand baggage. So I'm thinking, if the house catches fire, I can easily put her over one shoulder in a fireman's lift and carry her upstairs.
Thank you very much. I think that was the poem that you mentioned to me, that you also had in mind 1 or 2 lines from Sappho.
Yes, that was it. That was the very one.
Yeah. Did you begin with the dog, the Orla, or when did they come together? And the lines of Sappho?
I think I must have been reading those lines of Sappho and then got invited to the party with the dog.
Oh, right.
So they all got mixed up together. I'm still thinking about Sappho, yes.
Yes, thank you very, very much.
Good.
So has anybody got any more questions? No more questions. Would you like to read? I think there was one more that we had, perhaps. You've either got I Long to Talk with, or My Father at Prayer we have.
Oh, yes. See if we can get it on the screen. Will it come on the screen or? Oh, yes.
There we go. Wonderful.
My Father at Prayer. To save time in the mornings, Father used to say his prayers while doing a headstand on the bathroom rug, close to the backseat convector heater, and attended by familiar reading matter, a catalogue of clothes worn by the royal family, and slightly further away, Behanan's Yoga, open at the photograph illustrating isolation of the left rectus abdominis, a bearded fakir looking half embalmed, spread out on the blue linoleum. Maintaining this inverted position, he would read aloud from the nun's prayer, Lord, thou knowest I am no longer young. Swaying slightly, he brought to mind a girl tottering on 6-inch heels, bringing out protective instincts. In this position, nobody could approach him, and even death seemed for a while disarmed.
Thank you very much. That does actually just remind me of what Eliot says about when the mind is perfectly equipped to write poetry, because you bring together so many images and experiences in a quite remarkable way, so that we would think about the girl tottering on her heels and your father on his head and death disarmed simultaneously. Yes. And that is really great art. So thank you enormously for doing that. I don't know if we have time for one more, or if we are coming.
I think we are at time, so I am here to say our thank yous and our farewells, but I do want to say such a huge thank you to you, Jane, and Miles. Thank you so much for reading those poems to us. It was such a great reading. Someone said in the chat at one point, it's such a shame that we can't hear the group laughter, and I'm sorry that we couldn't hear each other laughing, because I was really laughing, and I'm sure you guys were laughing as well. So I had to sort of imagine us laughing together as a really spread out group, but this has been such a wonderful evening, and thank you all so much for being here, and like your messages in the chat have been so uplifting, and the poems were really, really great to hear, Miles. Congratulations on your book. Absolute pleasure to launch it with you this evening. So the last thing I need to tell you about, okay, please go and buy the book. As Jane said previously, buy, like a couple of 100 copies each. That would be great. I'm putting the link in the chat for you now. There's a code that you can get £2 off the book. If you can't do that right now, don't worry about it. We're going to send you an email tomorrow. It'll come from Zoom, so it'll be there for you. And if you can't find any of that stuff, just get in touch with me and I will help you get your copy of the book and your copies for your friends and family as well. So that's everything really from us. Thanks again. Please join us again next week. We're launching the new collection from Lorna Goodison, who you should definitely know. She was the first ever female Jamaican poet laureate, and her new collection, Mother Muse, is launching next week with Lee Jenkins. So check the website for the details of that, and join us again. So that's everything from us. I'll leave the chat open for a couple of minutes so you can get your final messages in there. But that's just thank you and good night, and congratulations again, Miles, and thank you.